Yo, I'd like to look at an earthquake that happened today here in Texas. I'm in Houston, but this earthquake happened. If we go up here to the USGS website, list of earthquakes, you can see for the United States. In fact, we can look at the whole map here. But you know, we have this one here in red. Go along this list, and you see that the only one in red is here in Texas. And earthquakes, at least for most of my life, have not been a particularly common occurrence here in Texas, though, um, in more recent years, they actually have been pretty common. So this happened around like 5:35 local time here in Houston, and that would also be the same time zone that Midland is in. Um, Midland and Odessa are like the larger um, cities in this area of Texas. Houston's down here. Um, but it was a 5.4 magnitude earthquake, which is very large for Texas. Um, if we go to this view, so what I've done here, you can see almost all of these are red, but I drew a rectangle that ended like basically it encompasses Texas and like a little bit of Oklahoma, just the borders of Texas, basically. So that's why you can see some down here. But we won't count the ones in Oklahoma or Mexico here, though I do think they're useful to look at. But Texas is not known for being, a particularly seismic area, other than more recently, and then even then, it's been specifically like these areas around far west Texas. Um, and so if we look at this, you can see the second most recent one. So this is the most recent earthquake on this list. And the second most recent earthquake on this list is here even further west. So this is actually the largest, somewhat eastern, more eastern earthquake in the history of Texas. Like all the other ones are in kind of this, same grouping over here, but this one's you know, more eastern. I mean, it's not East Texas, right? But it is more eastern than this other grouping. And it is near a larger population area. Um, so when we look, first of all, at if we pull up a satellite, you can see like all this activity. This is not like a big city, even though it looks like a grid structure. A lot of this stuff is like oil wells, right? So all this geometry that you see on the ground is like oil pumping operations and stuff to do with oil. And if we go down here, you can also see, um, that in these areas too, there seems to be like my guess is that there's oil pumping. Though the oldest one on here is uh, over here, and that was in like 1931. So Um, not necessarily sure they had the same level of oil pumping and drilling and stuff. But yeah, a lot of these are, I believe, drill points where they drill into the ground and they're either going for oil or possibly natural gas. I don't, I wasn't a petroleum engineer or anything like that, and I don't know a ton. Even though I live here in the energy capital, Houston, I don't know a ton about oil in that sense. But I do have a basic understanding that a lot of this, like I said, the geometry that almost looks like a grid pattern going on here is related to oil, or drilling, or energy, trying to get up energy out of the ground in some form. So The earthquake that happened today is a 5.4 north northwest, 22 kilometers north northwest of Midland, Texas. And I believe I saw this from a YouTube video. I was actually here where I live, my specific neighborhood in Houston. For whatever reason, the power went out just in the local area around me, and it went out for like from basically four something, or maybe like four exactly 3:50 till eight something or nine. So power was out for a huge portion of the day. But during that time period, there was a large earthquake here in um, Midland, right? And when I say large for Texas, anything above a five is large in Texas. And to illustrate that, when I drew the rectangle here, I went, I set the date to go all the way back to 1900, and I set so the parameters are this is every earthquake from 1900 to present day 2022, almost 2023, right? We're only a little bit away from 2023. And my balls energy drink, gamer energy drink. Uh, and tastes like nostalgia, land centers. But anyway, that's a different subject. This is when I drew the square, which is it's going to give all the earthquakes within the square. And like I said, I encompassed all of Texas in the square, so there's not a part of Texas that's not within this the parameters here. You can see that the other parameter that I set was it has to be an earthquake above 5.0 in magnitude or above 4.9, so anything 5 and above. And what you'll notice is within this area, I mean, you can see a 6.3 here in Mexico, right? That's the largest on this group, and it's from 1928. But other than that, there's nothing above a 5, in above the range of 5. So a 5.0 to a 5.9. Nothing above that within Texas. And you can see that only 5 earthquakes pop up in Texas. Um, and so let's look at those. And we'll look from the most recent to the oldest. And the most recent is today, obviously, or yesterday, technically. It's 12:35 a.m. on the next day from when this happened. But on the 17th, this happened on the 16th. But if we go back, we can see this one, which was also like a 5.3 rated earthquake that was bumped up zero point 0.1, which is interesting. Something that I've noticed with the USGS is generally they bump earthquakes down. So like if it's a 5.0 earthquake, a lot of the time USGS will be more conservative and bump it down to a 4.9. Um, why they do it, I have my guesses. I think it's because they don't want to cause panic and they kind of want to maybe change the. I do think there are instances. What I'm getting at is that where it's a 5 and they say it's a 4.9. But in any instance, um, and that's not every case, but I do notice there's a lot of point nines that seem to come up that it's been reviewed and then it gets reviewed again, and it's now a something point nine. It's the point nine club. You can talk to Dutch Sense about that. But I noticed that both of these they bumped up, which again is not normal. USGS typically does not bump earthquakes up from their initial reading. It's I mean, you could probably do a statistical analysis, and I'm almost 100% positive that what I just said is correct. That probably statistically they bump most of the earthquakes down. So in my guess, that probably means these are this big, in the least. Okay, so next, you can see in 2020 there's a 5.0 magnitude earthquake, also in Mentone, Texas. So the last one, which happened literally a month ago, exactly a month ago from the 5.4, which is also a 5.3 that got bumped up. So that's also very interesting. A month to the day, literally November 16th and December 16th, right? Um, so that's something interesting. Now you go back in the most recent 5 point anything earthquake here in Texas, before these two, is in 2020, and we had to go back quite far to get other 5 point anything magnitude earthquake in Texas. Magnitude earthquakes in Texas, 5.0 and above magnitude earthquakes in Texas. So in 1995, in April 13th, there was a 5.7, 13 kilometers northwest of Marathon, Texas, and that's the one that we're looking at over here. By the way, this is Texas is pretty geographically, and I would guess geologically, but there's like a wide range of geography in Texas. So where I live is over here is very swampy. You can see it's the Gulf Coast. Like there's a large body of water right next to us. There's large rivers that are cutting through the area. In fact, the city of Houston, if you go in here, literally this is called Buffalo Bayou, and it goes it cuts through downtown, and like it's a geographic feature. You go downtown, there's like a bayou. Up in North Texas, it's a lot of plains. It's like, they call this the Great Plains, right? Well, you start getting that when you're headed towards, like from Houston to Dallas. I went to UT Dallas. That's what this is here. And it's the University of Texas at Dallas, not the University of Tennessee at Dallas. Uh, but yeah, I went to UT Dallas, and one thing I can tell you is there is a large geographic change when you're going from Houston to Dallas. There's lots of trees around us here. You get up to Dallas, and it's the plains. There's lots of fields. I used to call Dallas California on the prairie because it's a bunch of suburbs. It's not necessarily one, like, you see Houston, and it's like there's a downtown, and then there's a ring around that, and within that there's like a very urbanized area, and then there's a bigger ring around that, which is somewhat suburban, but there are parts of it that are still built up with skyscrapers, like actual tall buildings. Like a good example would be, out here you have like one of the taller buildings in the state of Texas, Williams Tower, and that's outside of 610, and you have like the energy district and other stuff. So, um, comparing Houston and Dallas, there's lots of trees and then lots of fields. San Antonio and Austin have more. I went to UT Dallas. I didn't go to UT Austin. So, but the Central Texas type stuff is more. There are trees, and it's a little more hilly. So it's like hill country, Texas hill country. And then when you start getting this far west, it's like legitimately uh, starting to get like you actually do have some somewhat tall mountains, which you got to take that with a grain of salt from me, because I live in probably one of the flattest areas that you could possibly live. Like even Dallas is more hilly, and there's more change in elevation than in Houston, significantly. Like Houston's very flat, and it's the only reason it's hard to tell is because of all the trees. Um, but over here, you can tell that like when we did this satellite view, I mean, this looks even like there's changes in elevation that you can pretty much visibly see, right? So um, that's where this 5.7 happened. And then in 1931, so the only other 5 point something earthquake recorded in Texas before 1995 was in 1931, and that was a 5.8, 12 kilometers southwest of Valentine or Valentine, but I'm gonna go with Valentine, Texas. And I'm not even sure if this depth is correct because I don't know what they could discern in 1931. But you can see that happened August 16th, 1931. And for Texas, this is literally the largest earthquake to have ever happened in Texas, a 5.8, right? Um, so let's look back over this and see what this means. All right, the largest earthquake, a 5.8, Valentine, Texas. The second largest, so that's 1931. The second largest is 1995. It's at 5.7, and it's just a little west of that. They're almost lined up. Um, you can see if you put longitude and latitude lines, like they'd almost be lined up. And then you have in a triangle from those, you have Mentone, Texas in 2020 with a 5.0, and at that time that was the third largest. And then only a month ago exactly, there was the 5.4 magnitude that occurred November 16th, and that became the third largest, and the 5.0 is now the fourth largest. So we have the four largest earthquakes to ever happen in Texas. And now the earthquake that happened, I'm going to say, it's the 17th. I'm just going to say today because I'm still awake from when I experienced this, but it is technically the 17th, but I'm going to say today. So the 16th, just keep that in mind. So today's earthquake, or the earthquake that happened in the past 24 hours, is now tied for the third largest earthquake to ever happen in the state of Texas. All right, that's a big deal, right? This is according to the USGS, and when we look at this, this is indeed reviewed, contributed by, I think, some kind of Texas agency, Texas Seismological Network, TexNet. So we'll look back at this, but tectonic summary. The December 16th, 2022, 5.4 magnitude Texas earthquake occurred as the result of shallow normal faulting about 22 kilometers northwest of the town of Midland, Texas. When it says shallow normal faulting, I mean, maybe that's some kind of geophysics or earth sciences, by normal. I mean, but this is, again, what I just showed you as far as how long it's been since there's been, other than a month ago, how long it's been since there's been another earthquake this size, should tell you that it's not that normal. Now, maybe they're talking about as far as the actual, like, how normal it is in other places. Like, oh, it's a normal occurrence, a normal type of faulting, but it isn't like a normal magnitude, normal degree of faulting that we see here in Texas. I can assure you that you can see that based on literally what I just showed you about how common this size of an earthquake is, right? Literally, and another thing that you can see is it's only been a month since we got something this big. And prior to that, it was 2 years. And then prior to that, it was, 25 years. And then prior to that, it was like 70 years. So we're getting, you know what I mean? Like, there does seem to be a shortening of the thrust, in the sense of, like, they're starting to seemingly become more rapid at a larger magnitude, right? The earthquake occurred within the interior of the North American plate, far from any tectonic boundaries, and is therefore considered an intraplate earthquake. The preliminary focal mechanism solution for the earthquake indicates rupture occurred on a moderately dipping normal fault plane striking either to the northwest or southwest. The region surrounding the earthquake, December 16th earthquake is seismically active. Again, nothing of this size that you can clearly see, and I will actually change the uh, parameters of earthquakes so you can see. We'll kind of do a review of earthquakes this of any size here in Texas, and you'll be like, oh yeah, no, nothing close. Um, I mean, the only things that are close are the 4 earthquakes that I've shown. So anyway, since 2018, about 120 earthquakes of magnitude 2.5 and larger have struck within 50 kilometers of the recent quake. Larger earthquakes have struck in the broader area. At 5 magnitude 5.4 earthquake, a magnitude 5.4 earthquake struck on November 16th, 2022, about 200 kilometers to the west, and a 5.0 on March 26th, 2020, also about 200 kilometers to the west. On August 1st, 1971, a magnitude 4.8. So this is not within the parameters of the size that I pointed out. Like this is a less than a 5.0 magnitude earthquake they're about to talk about. And it's also 1975. That's like quite a 45 years ago 45 years ago, right? Like uh actually 48 almost. A magnitude 4.8 earthquake occurred approximately 200 kilometers to the west southwest of this recent quake. However, a detailed history of less than 3 magnitude earthquakes in this region is not well known because the region was not well covered by seismometers until recent years. Over the past 2 decades, the central and eastern United States has experienced an increase in the occurrence of earthquakes. Scientific studies have linked much of this increase to human activity, predominantly wastewater injection into deep disposal wells. However, other mechanisms such as fluid withdrawal, enhanced oil recovery, or hydraulic fracturing processes can also result in induced earthquakes. Whoops. In addition, regions with frequent induced events may also be subject to damaging earthquakes that would have occurred independently of human activity, making a strong scientific case for a causative link between a particular human activity and a particular sequence of earthquakes. Typically involves special studies devoted specifically to the question. Such investigations usually address the process by which the suspected triggering activity might have significantly altered stresses in the rocks at the earthquake source, and they commonly address the ways in which the characteristics of the suspected human triggered earthquakes differ from the characteristics of natural earthquakes in the region. Research suggests the March 2020 magnitude 5 earthquake was the result a large increase in wastewater injection in the region. But here, I do want to do this real quick. This should be okay, yeah, it is. So you should be able to see it without anything blocking. If you want to pause the video, you can read what it says here. You can also go to this link up at the top. And yeah, so I'm going to pull this back up. And this is TextNet. You can see all the info here as far as like this is who contributed this. It looks like it's put on by the University of Texas. No. Whoosh. Go Comets. What is it? Something like this. This is our thing. Uh, as a UT Dallas Comet. Um. Anyway, so which again, like I'm saying, UT Dallas. It's part of the University of Texas system. Okay, so this is way more confusing than the USGS catalog, so I'm legitimately just not going to look at it. But the USGS catalog, I will do the thing that I just talked about where I changed the parameters. But let's look at this. First of all, you can see this earthquake that happened was 7 hours and 13 minutes ago. It was 713 minutes ago. or 713 ago, 7 hours and 13 minutes ago. That's a Houston joke because our area code 713. Anyway, you can see that the EMSC rates it at a 5.2. We'll see what GFZ and maybe they have a. Okay, they don't. Western Texas GFZ. This is Germany's research center. German GFC, German Research Center for Geosciences. You can see where they think it is. This is automatic, so it's not reviewed by a person, but it has it at a 5.3. Like I said, it was upgraded. USGS initially had it at a 5.3. They bumped it up. You can see that this says 5.2. I'm not exactly sure who provided that, but they bumped it up. This person in Midland, 16 kilometers south of the epicenter, says, biggest I've ever felt. The next person said, and you can see how far they are from the epicenter, biggest one we felt here. So these are testimonies from people that logged into the European seismology website and or seismological agency's website and have posted what they're saying. Only lasted maybe 5 seconds. This says I had to hang on to the kitchen counter to keep from falling over. Shook the whole house and the power went out. Seemed quite large. Shook the house for a minute. I know about the power going out, though ours happened from rain and it was like so little rain here to cause the power to go out. There's no lightning or thunder. I mean, there's no lightning that caused it. I don't know why it took like 5 hours to get it back on, but okay. Anyway, shook the house for about a minute. Walls shook. Felt like the washer and dryer closet shaking about. Fourth floor of hotel shook hotel pretty good. Sounded at first like a large truck was driving up to my house, vibrations throughout the windows. Then from the east to the west, it sounded like a large truck had struck the house and was driving through it. Everything rattled from east to west for about 20 to 30 seconds, made me run outside expecting to see something. This is the first time I have felt an earthquake that has occurred near me. So keep in mind, the USGS, which again, I said it, I think is specifically they try to be more conservative about these. They're almost playing, like, it looks to me like, this is another case where they're trying to undersell how significant this earthquake is, right? Like, when you read the actual testimonies, when someone's like, when they're saying, yeah, but like however many earthquakes have happened in this region before, and like a bunch of geosciences jargon, and yeah, that's it. That's their statement. Whereas when you're actually reading like people's statements, this is the first time I felt an earthquake that has occurred near me. Biggest I've ever felt, multiple of them. Made the house sway, sounded like a loud rumble. Made the windows rattle. Pictures on shelves rattled and shook. No apparent structure damage, but all of us in the house immediately felt it. It didn't start out slow at all. Felt the earthquake and heard a deep boom sound. Was sitting on the couch and the whole house shook. Our Christmas tree was about to fall over as it swayed with the vibrations. Felt my house and bed shake for a good 20 seconds. Andrews, I guess maybe a military base. Anyway, lasted a minute. Vibrated my recliner, then recliner weren't in motion side to side. Whole house shook. Loudest, longest I have felt. Shook the house no longer than 10 to 15 seconds. I felt my house shake. Not only did I feel the earthquake, I heard the rumble. Earthquake felt. Snyder, Texas felt like someone was on my roof. I know that sound and feeling. I'm from California. Creaking heard in walls, roof of house. Monitor arms shook. Cat went to hide. Felt here in Lubbock. Felt like a train nearby. So, Lubbock is decently. Lubbock's up here. So if they're feeling it in Lubbock, they probably also might have felt it in Roswell, New Mexico, which only recently when I looked up the last earthquake did I realize, wow, Roswell is actually pretty close to Texas. Um, I mean, if you look, Roswell, New Mexico's up here. It's what, Area 51 somewhere around here, right? Where is Area 51, I wonder? Area 51 somewhere around here. I don't, it's Roswell. So, but yeah, if they felt it in Lubbock, I mean, Roswell's not that much different in distance than Lubbock, so they might have felt it there. They could have felt it in Abilene. They could have felt it in San Angelo. I remember with the last one, people were saying they felt it in San Antonio, which is like, you can see the distance to San Antonio from where the last one was. So people might have felt this in Dallas. People might have felt this in Austin. I mean, this is much closer to those regions too. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Lubbock, blinds and ceiling fans shaking, water and water bottle sloshing back and forth. Very short and unusual here. San Angelo. So let's look back here. San Angelo's here. Uh, Rocked my living room and me in my computer chair. I felt my house shaking. Carlsbad felt the shaking and my windows shaking. So Carlsbad, New Mexico, right? So that's on the way to Roswell from here. Um, Abilene. I live in Abilene. Our house is a mobile home. We thought our washing machine was out of control. The whole house shook and made a loud rumbling noise. Abilene, it was pretty hard shake. Roswell. There you go. In Roswell, New Mexico's in Roswell, New Mexico. Chairs rocked a little and window blinds shook a little. Roswell, definitely the most intense quake I've personally experienced. Woke from nap thinking my son was rocking the couch and say the ceiling fan and Christmas tree, saw the ceiling fan and Christmas tree moving, followed by my children asking if there's an earthquake. Most intense quake they've ever felt, and that's Roswell. So they might have felt it at Area 51, huh? Or what, S4, Area S4, S7, something like that. Anyway, uh, hope to have a 7 magnitude on Yellowstone sooner. Lol, where is this? Doesn't even say where that person. But 277 East. Probably like over by Abilene or maybe this way. Okay. House shook for 5 to 8 seconds, no damage. It's 322 kilometers. Light rolling, Alamogordo, lasted solid 10 seconds. In western Oklahoma and just felt it. Just a little rumble. I used to live in California. I know how they feel. That means they're feeling it up here. You know what I mean? Like way up here. Um, just trying to find it. If you haven't figured out, I'm being pretty thorough and looking over this because it's other than the previous one that was exactly a month ago, we don't typically get earthquakes of this magnitude here in Texas. And I did a video with the previous one, but I didn't put it up on. I didn't put it up on my YouTube, but I am gonna put this one on the YouTube. So, um, I'm gonna keep going through this, and we'll eventually get through this. Okay, so 414 and Thayer. I'll even look this up. Why not? City in Oklahoma. That's probably the one. It's probably not the Pennsylvania. Thayer. Um. Okay, so that's like up here. They might have felt this in Amarillo. Okay. Do they have testimonies? I don't know. It doesn't seem to be. I wish the USGS also did this testimonies thing. It doesn't seem that they do in the same way. Um, but we can actually go through these and see. Put 1,000 of them up. So it's starting at Midland. Let's see where the furthest one was. Alameda, California. I don't think they're feeling the same earthquake there. When they said they felt it in Houston, I don't believe that. I could believe that they're feeling this level of shake in in these places, but I felt nothing here in Houston around that time. Though I might have gone back asleep because I was like, well, there's nothing to do. There's no electricity, and it's raining outside. Like what? So, okay. Anyway, well, now that we've looked at that, I guess like the last part of the USGS website that I want to look at is if we do this. So let's see. So you can see this is what this is the parameters that I set. But I'm gonna go to modify, and we'll do modify search, and we'll do a minimum of even 2. And you can see this is the rectangle that I drew. So it's kind of hard because it didn't get the whole rectangle. Oh no, it didn't get the whole rectangle in right, but I ended it right below Brownsville. You know, we can do it a little more tucked in. We're just trying to find Texas quakes, right? So let's bring this in a little bit. Okay, so that should be Texas, right? Actually, you know what? I'll even expand this a little bit this way so you can see like Gulf of Mexico quakes and stuff. So we'll do it this big, right? So this will include some stuff in the Gulf of Mexico because there are some earthquakes in the Gulf very rarely. And again, this goes back to 1900. And we'll do a minimum of a 1. We'll do 2. We'll do it. It has to be at least a 2.5. Yeah, okay. Search. It's going to take a lot longer because there are way more earthquakes of smaller magnitude. Now it's showing 13,207 earthquakes, so that doesn't tell you the difference. And you can see, so within that rectangle that I drew, first thing I want to look at is specifically the area where a lot of these earthquakes have happened. You can see this geographical area here. There's a lot centered specifically around like Mentone and the other large earthquake that has happened like last month. And Midland, does get some earthquakes, and so does Snyder here, right? Or around Snyder. You can see that maybe this is one of the reasons why Roswell was chosen. Is it seems to be in a rather seismic dead zone, but that could also be, it could be related to the government not wanting earthquake reporting out of the region specifically because you had to put up sensors, and they don't want sensors there because it could, mess with what's going on at Area 51 or whatever's going on around Roswell, right? Um, I don't know what I'm expecting. If I'm expecting there's going to be like a giant a giant sign that's like Area 51 right here. Um, oh well, that's why I'm a terrible conspiracy theorist. So I'm getting Roswell and Area 51 mixed up. Yeah, I guess I'm bad at conspiracy theory. Kind of sucks. I was hoping to go all in on conspiracy, but oh well. So ignore what I said. But yeah, they did feel it around Roswell. So don't ignore that part, but ignore the part where I'm assuming that Area 51 is by Roswell because just getting those mixed up. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, so maybe it probably is then just a seismological dead zone. You can see that there's not much around Lubbock either, though there is one. But one of the things that I wanted to point out here is you can see that, like, within Texas, specifically, like, this area has a lot of earthquakes. Up by Amarillo has some earthquakes. Dallas has quite a few earthquakes, right? This is actually, like, Irving. You can see, like, these are not that far from downtown Dallas. Like, this is downtown Dallas, this little downtown slash uptown Dallas right here. And you can see a lot of these earthquakes are happening between downtown and the airport by Irving. So, yeah. And you can also see South Dallas getting some Midlothian and just north of Waxahachie and stuff like that. And then south of San Antonio also seems to have quite a few. But for Houston here, we don't particularly get that many earthquakes. In fact, the closest earthquakes to Houston, you can see this one in Hallettsville. I think this is like 150 miles or kilometers, over 100 miles away, right? Um, they have some here in Nacogdoches. This might be the closest, or this one. These are like 100 miles away. On the other side, Sulphur. Yeah. This one's like over 100 miles away. So is this one. So is here in the Gulf. So Houston specifically, where I live, is very much a seismological dead zone. We don't get earthquake activity here. Like, it is not a place where you would assume that there's earthquake activity. You can see there's quite a few actually here in Oklahoma. And you can see that there's uh, going up towards, like, I think the New Madrid Fault is somewhere around here. But you can see that headed up towards St. Louis. That's where Dutch Sense, who's like a very earthquake conspiracy kind of guy. Uh, you know, there's earthquake. The square that I mean, the rectangle that I made is not big enough to get up there, but you can see that Houston is just like a dead zone, right? And I'm guessing there's probably some earthquakes that could happen around here. They might just not have sensors as thoroughly around here because they might not be as, there's like, if there's nothing to have sensors out there for, like, if there's no one living in the area, I mean, not no one, but not a huge population, then there's not necessarily reasons to spend a bunch of money putting out seismometers. Uh, and yeah, like I said, you can see there are some here in the Gulf of Mexico, right? And it looks like, south of Louisiana, there's been like a 5.3 and a, like, I don't know, 150 kilometers southwest of Grand Isle, Louisiana. But again, we don't particularly get earthquakes here in Texas. You can see close to Bryan College Station in Milano, Texas, there's also been an earthquake, but we do not get earthquakes here in Houston. We get storms, not as much earthquake activity. But yeah, I wanted to look at this because you can see where in Texas the general, like, large amounts of earthquakes happen. And so when the USGS is talking about there being earthquakes in the area, you can literally see, like, I've pulled it up for you. These are pretty much all the earthquakes of size. You know, these are all above a 2.5, right? There might be some smaller ones, and in fact, here we could do. Why don't we do this? I'm gonna lower this to 1.5. I think anything below that. First of all, it already loaded 13,000 earthquakes. At a certain, yeah, okay, it exceeds 20,000, so I literally can't do it. However, I can do this. Let's bring this in a little closer again. Let's try it. Okay, that took like 3,000 earthquakes off. About above a 2. Okay, so yeah, you can see it does add some earthquakes. There's an earthquake in Brenham in 1992. This is like seemingly the closest earthquake we've ever had to Houston. Um, but yeah, you can see the number of earthquakes even in these areas have increased. In fact, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna lower this even more, and I'm gonna cut off the panhandle. So it's not that I don't think that the panhandle is Texas, but there's so many that have happened in Oklahoma that just having the panhandle included is causing causing it to not load. So we're going to use that region. We're going to say a minimum of 1. So this should be every earthquake pretty much that has happened in this area. And you can even see a couple have happened since the bigger one, 3.3, a 1.9, a 2.7. This is usually what you see for Texas. You can see Toya, Texas, Tuya, Texas. Yeah. But yeah, it looks like this one in Brenham is the closest we've ever had here in Houston. And that's still like it's like 80 miles, but I think it was north a little more. Or I guess a little south of Brenham and to the west. So let's check that. South and to the west. Anyway, so we'll say 85 miles from Houston is like the closest earthquake, and it was not a large earthquake, and it happened in 1992, and there hadn't been any other earthquake activity since then. And maybe there, I mean, how about this? How about I do an even more refined search? 0.5. I don't know if it even goes that low, but we'll see. It didn't really add that many more, so I don't even think they really look at earthquakes that are that much smaller. But so you can see pretty much where the earthquakes are within this region of Texas. Like I said, it's not that I don't think Amarillo is, but there's just a lot of earthquakes that happen up here. Um, and so basically, you can see that we don't get a lot of earthquakes around where I am, but over in West Texas, there are a lot of earthquakes. But still, the magnitude 5+ earthquakes are very rare. And today's earthquake is tied for the third largest earthquake of all time in Texas. I say of all time, of all recorded history here in Texas. Um, so, by the way, there is a uh, Las Cruces and Fort Bliss, right? And there are military things going on around that region, but it's not it's not Area 51. My bad. So that's gonna be it for looking at this, I suppose. I just find it really interesting that it's only been a month since we had an earthquake of that magnitude, right? And we get another one literally a month later, exactly to the day, right? It's just it should tell you that something is going on, right? And for me, when you watch my videos where I'm looking at storms and storm activity, and there's a lot of them within the past couple years, right? Like I have a lot of storm videos on my channel, more than in fact here I just and there's a reasoning to why I'm talking about this, but I do want to look at this real fast just so I can. I have 104 weather videos on my YouTube channel. On This is my personal channel, and this is not my. I guess this is my oldest YouTube channel, but I had another one that I don't use currently. that I could link where I do have some other storm videos that there's some impressive storm activity. Um, However, I'm thinking I'm going to maybe uh, like put something together that showcases maybe some of the most impressive storm activity. Um, but I mean, since let's see, let me find when the earliest video is. How about this? Sort by oldest. So the first storm video that I put up on this channel, May 18th of 2021. And since then, I mean, some of these are like individual lightning strikes that I thought are impressive. Um, Here's like a rainbow that I thought was impressive looking, and a sunset that I thought looked pretty incredible, stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe between 50 and 75 individual like thunderstorms that I've recorded are up on this channel, right? Um, the channel that you'd currently be looking at. And this includes some time lapses. Maybe I could take these off, but legitimately 50 to 75, which is quite a lot since 2021, right? And it's not one of the things that I'm getting at here is when I do them, um, my belief, like I'm religiously inclined, right? I really believe the Bible. But even more specifically, I believe in the deity called Yahweh, right? The God of the Bible called Yahweh, and certain things that are spoken of in the Bible. And I think that one of the things that it hints at is like the prophets of Yahweh seem to have the ability to do what is seen as like supernatural uh, miracles or like works of power over the natural world. So they can do, through the power of Yahweh, supernatural works that affect the natural world, right? So specifically like Elijah the prophet even talks about him as like a man with a constitution much like you or I think is the way that it says it, but he prayed earnestly for rain and was like he was heard in that. And additionally, like he legitimately just calls fire down from heaven to show in a contest between the prophets of Baal and him being the lone prophet of Yahweh. And it talks about, in Moses, like a strong east wind is what it says separates the Red Sea, I believe. Or Red Sea, Dead Sea, the sea that the Israelites cross and then, closes up on Pharaoh's army as they're having their exodus out of Egypt, right? And, Jesus, one of the things where Jesus calms the storm, right? I don't believe he's just a prophet, but, he seems, it shows this power that Yahweh has over nature, where instead of like bringing a storm, he calms it, right? So it kind of shows like, it's one thing that you have a guy who can like cause the chaos, right? But with Jesus, it's like it's showing he can take the chaos, which storms and sea are seen as like symbols of chaos, right? And he orders the chaos by like legitimately with his like telling it to calm down, right? um, and to be still. And so he does that, much like the idea I think is that in Genesis, Yahweh calls over the deep, which are again it's symbols of chaos and stuff. This place that is without form and void, and as it says in the Old Testament, it's then Yahweh speaks over the uh, this chaos, and it is ordered, which is possibly also like symbolic of things that are uh, in other kind of ancient Near East systems that none of those existed. Like nobody's following Babylon, right? Or the Babylonian gods, and if they are, it's like they're small offshoot cults or something like that. But this is like the only uh, religion that like most I think it's Christianity is generally considered the largest religious group in the world, and I truly believe in myself that while it is the largest, that most people don't believe it as the narrative is trying to get them to believe that there is, most people are just like, do you believe in God? And it's like, my thing would be like, well, I don't just believe in God, right? I believe in a specific God, a specific deity called Yahweh. And this deity is different from many other gods, and he works, and I'll tie this into this earthquake here in Texas video. Just give me a second. Um, he works in ways where he allows those who follow him and those who are, like Jesus, his son, who you can be. The idea of Christianity is you could be adopted as one of the sons of Yahweh or one of the sons or daughters of Yahweh, um, a child of Yahweh, right? When it says a child of God, specifically Yahweh. It's not talking about a child of Allah. And, I say that specifically because in Islam, it is blasphemous to say that you are a child of God and that Jesus is a son of God. Like, these are blasphemous things according to Islam, though the Old Testament and the New Testament predate Islam, and Islam is arguably a fan fiction of the Bible, but like the Quran is a fan fiction of the Bible and not a very well written one at that. But I digress. This is not a diatribe against Islam. This is me talking about uh, the one true God, Yahweh, who is, he does offer to his followers. Like I truly believe those who really believe, he offers that same supernatural ability that he gave his prophets, and he protects them with the same supernatural power that he protected the prophets with and his anointed with. And like with Jesus, people would be like, "Oh, well, Jesus died. Like, what do you mean he protected him?" The idea is that Jesus fulfilled a character role, but specifically that character role is that Jesus was Yahweh, and Yahweh came and like died as a human to like basically destroy death forever. The idea is that okay, the worst thing that someone could do to you is kill you, right? And then show your body out publicly and like disgrace you like that. And Yahweh's basically like this has no power over me or like those who follow me. I literally just will raise him from the dead and use it as like a symbolic story and narrative that will carry throughout history, and those who believe in that narrative at some point I will raise back, and like everybody, we can be in this point in history, like a singularity in the future where we all actually live together here on this earth that I will renew to be like a Garden of Eden. Um, and so what I'm getting at is I think that this supernatural power can be on display from time to time. And here in Texas, I can at least vouch for myself in saying I personally clearly believe in this deity, Yahweh, Yah, Yo. If you hear me say Yah or Yo, those are both ways. If the name Yahweh is prefixed on a name, it's Yo. If it's suffixed, it's Yah. They're both accurate, and if you hear the name Jehovah, it's just a transliteration of that name Yahweh, where it got put into English and they tried to use English letters to make it make sense. But okay. In the New Testament, it says that the we have the spirit of prophecy, and like there's other things, but particularly I'm getting at like people look at you if you believe like in that prophetic spirit. People believe, not Christians generally, but some Christians might, Christians that just go to some mega church, or, they don't actually really believe that much. It's just like a tradition that they follow. Um, that if you are saying something prophetic or believing something prophetic or supernatural, like, you're crazy. The irony is, as I've explained in some of the storm videos, where you can literally see, you can very clearly see a pattern of activity going on around, like a more consistent and extreme level of activity going around my being, someone who clearly believes in Yahweh, who is clearly like claiming that this is what's going on with my mouth, calling it out, speaking it as it does exist, speaking it into existence, but I mean, it's Yahweh doing it, right? Um, that level of like belief is seen as crazy, and yet in the Old Testament, that is the exact like, oh, you'd be called a madman if you were saying that, and they might lock you up in a mental institution if you really believed it, and it, you know, and you were trying to fight people on it as far as your belief, like you really wanted to get that over to people, and they could use it as a reason to lock you up in the mental hospital. They literally call in Hebrew a word that is equivalent to madman. That's what they called the prophets. Like specifically, like the follower who anoints. I mean, numerous times in the Old Testament, but like the guy who anoints Yehu as like the new anointed, and then he goes and kills Jezebel, is a student or disciple of Elijah, probably, because that's who fights Jezebel and Ahab. This character is called Madman, a madman. Like, what is this madman talking about? And they knew, these were Israelites who knew Yahweh was God, and that their people had seen Yahweh act in reality, and yet they still called the prophets madmen. So kind of what I'm getting over is, as much as this might sound crazy, I believe that since my lifetime started, I have seen some supernatural events. And here in Texas, where I live, this guy who very clearly believes in Yahweh, and I'm pretty sure very few instances of recorded supernatural like events. You could, it's hard to find like recorded supernatural events like on YouTube or something. I mean, there's literally a video of me getting hit by a car and walking it off on this channel, like the channel that I'm going to put this on. There's like a pattern of videos where I'm like, I believe that this is like related somehow to my being, and that there, Yahweh is affecting it based on my, around my being, just as he did in the narrative, which a fourth of the world believes. Like, right? Anybody who's Christian, you believe in that narrative. And I, as someone who have read it thoroughly, can tell you the points where, yes, this very much is saying that you should have access to that ability too, or in the least, you should be able to get Yahweh to actively take that role in your reality to show that same thing. And so, what I'm getting at here is, I believe, it's not common that you get a large earthquake like that here in Texas. It's not common that you get two in one exact month period, two in 1 month of the same size or around the same size, right? It's not like, again, we just looked at all the earthquakes. There are not that many earthquakes that have ever happened in Texas that are above even a 4 magnitude, but above a 5, it's less than, like, you can literally count all of them on one hand, right? And so the fact that, again, it happened 1 month, like there was a gap of 1 month, that's pretty significant in my opinion. Like, right? It's like literally the same day a month later. Um, and on my previous channel, there are literally videos where I sit down and I say, I'm going to do something, and you're going to see that volcano active, right? There's going to be activity, volcanic activity. There's videos on that channel of me exploding in anger simultaneously. El Popocatépetl, El Popo, the Smoky Mountain in between Mexico City and Puebla explodes, right? Um, And again, I'm saying that Yahweh does this, but he does it specifically just like miracles around or works of power around the anointed and those prophetically inclined in the Old Testament and New Testament. The idea is that that's a real thing that happens, right? And you have to believe it to see it. And most people have that belief robbed out of them by a society that doesn't want to believe in a deity, specifically not Yahweh. A lot of people who are even Christian don't want to say the name Yahweh. Like they don't even want to acknowledge that that's a important part of the reality around that deity that they claim they follow. That you need to like believe in him through his name, which I do think that that's a pretty big deal considering it's the most popularly used word in the Old Testament besides and the is the name Yahweh, and yet most people don't even know it. So, and that's his proper name. Like I'm Matt. This channel is Matt Wilkins or Watt Milkins, right? The God of the Old Testament, the God of the Bible, the God of Jesus, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Abraham. That is Yahweh, right? Or Yahoo or Yahoo or, there's different pronunciations. If you're saying Yah, you're close enough, in my opinion, because, the digrammaton is Yah or Yo, and the tetragrammaton is Yahweh or Yahuwah or Yahuwah or Yahweh. I mean, I hear people argue about it. I just go with Yahweh. I mean, that one's easy enough, and I believe close enough where Yahweh's like, okay, yeah, you're not. Someone says Mateo or Matthew or something for my name. It's like, okay, well, it's Matthew, but I get it. You know what I mean? Even the pronunciation is something that is spoken of in the Old Testament when Yahweh's like, I will, to Moses, to this guy who he's like close to, I will show you my back as I walk by you, and I will pronounce the name Yahweh. I mean, so even then, the pronunciation seems to be like, well, Yahweh, I'm sure can pronounce it perfectly, but anyway, so I go with Yo or Yah. I mean, again, it's not inaccurate, so but yeah, my point is that I can say personally, I believe that here in Texas, where I live, I don't live in the seismically active part. Otherwise, just like I don't particularly get too much hail on me, but it seems like if I, there's numerous instances where I've recorded a video, talked about hail events, like large hail events or something. There was one where I talked about it, and then this was the most recent massive hailstorm in Mexico City where it like caused a supermarket to collapse under the weight, like the roof of this supermarket to collapse under the weight of the hailstorm. It was, I believe, earlier this year. The day before, I have a video on my hard drive where I literally just talk about the hailstorm. I'm looking at El Popocatépetl, so Mexico City, and talking about how, it seems like when there's something going on in my reality, and it seems like, to me, it seems like I'm given a false reality. Just throwing that out there. I don't, it seems like some people are messing with me. I can't force people not to, but I do think Yahweh can show like, look, this guy actually believes in me, and he does it in my name, which is like a rarity in this day and age, in all of history. But in this day and age specifically, like personally, I talk to people who I'm like, Yahweh's important, the name, and they're like, no, it's not. I just call him Lord. It's like, well, there's all sorts of lords. So my point here is that specifically believing him in the way he asks. Now, on top of this, is important to him, and he'll show himself in that person's life and through supernatural activity in that person's life. Now, on top of this, I'm the only person who you'll ever meet, or at least at this point now, you would literally have to be a copycat of what I'm doing or what I'm saying, that believes in this reality. That in Revelation, the final book of the Bible, the 7 churches of Asia, the message that is sent to this 7 churches of Asia in the first, second, and third books of the Bible, It's mentioned in the first after the introduction. It explains what's going on, and it also explains that these churches are symbolic. They aren't, you know, physical churches. I mean, they are physical churches to a degree, but they aren't. They are very clearly symbolic. Like it talks about, oh, the what you see in my right hand and the lampstands. These have symbolic meaning, right? And Jesus, the Alpha and the Omega, explains to John their symbolic meaning, and then says, like, and then you get literally letters to these symbolic churches. They no longer exist physically, right? They don't. I mean, they just. I'm not asking. This is a rhetorical question. They no longer exist physically. They are very clearly a message to a person in the future in a slightly coded fashion in order to get over a series of if-then conditional statements. If you meet this condition, then I will give you this thing. If you do this, then you get this. If you are victorious at the church and you have gone through this situation that is pointed out, then this, right? That's what it is. I'm at least the only person that I know of in person, but even other people that I hear talk about this, they apply it to the whole church. Again, these are churches that are not like when it says the church, the ecclesia of whatever, I don't believe it's talking about the whole church. Maybe this can be about more than one person, but it's more in the vein that I'm talking about it, just based on logic, right? These if-then conditional statements that you seem to be, first of all, you have to complete them all in like a series, and that basically someone goes through these things and is given the gifts that is mentioned to these churches, right? I don't actually think it's a thing where it's like, hey, these churches get this and blah, blah, blah. I think it's coded message to churches actually meaning coded message to someone in the future who, when they recognize what this is, when they live this reality out and meet these if-then conditional statements, I will give them these gifts, including what sounds like the most fantastic gift to me is I will grant you to sit with me on my throne, right? That's what it literally says to the seventh church, Laodicea, in Laodicea, whatever. Anyway, in Revelation 3. That's the message to the final church. I mean, in other parts, it's like, to the sixth church, I'll write my name on you. So it seems like he's saying, you will be Yahweh, and you will sit on the throne of Yahweh. And then the fifth one's like, I will give you white robes, and I won't blot your name out of the book of life. The sixth church is also where Jesus says he has a new name, and then equates that name with the name of his father, which is Yahweh, as in Exodus 3:1-4, when he's saying I am who I am, and 3:15 it also states, this is my name forever. Okay, so when it says forever unto all generations, very clearly he's still Yahweh by Jesus's day and Yahweh by our day, and that's the name that it's saying, I will put this on you. I'll make you a pillar in the temple of my God. That's what Jesus is saying to this person who meets these if-then conditional statements. Again, to meet these if-then conditional statements, I think you have to believe what I've just stated, where they are clearly if-then conditional statements for someone to meet, not just like random things written at the end of the Bible that applies to all believers. I don't think that. Why? Because you clearly have to go through the things that it states or be going through them in order to meet those if-then conditional statements, and not everybody appears to be going through those things. I can say in my own reality, it does appear that I'm going through at least some of those things. And while I can't directly specify on every instance, I can more so than anybody else that I know. So, part of it is I don't think we're at the end completely yet, but I don't think we're that far. So, to sum everything up, now we started off talking about this earthquake, then you probably got to this part of the video and you're like, what is, this guy's rambling on about, Yahweh and the Bible, and it's like, well, it's my YouTube channel. I can pretty much do whatever I want on it, right? So, I mean, tough stuff. If you don't like it, I mean, just exit the video. I don't care. But if you're willing to rational out these things, and you can see that there does seem to be some weird uptick in like storm activity in this guy's reality, and he definitely, like, again, maybe I'll make a highlight video where I just show all the supernatural stuff, um, and crazy stuff that has happened in my reality in the past however many years. Okay, so I mean, like, my point is that some of this stuff, like this earthquake that happened, again, only a month directly, like literally exactly a month after the previous earthquake. It might even be a month exactly to the hour, right? Like, I think we've started or ended daylight saving time. I don't know. I live in a city. We don't really, what I mean? Daylight saving time doesn't affect me. It's just, roll forward or back your clock. So, anyway, this is at least 1 month and 1 or 2 hours off. I mean, that's the chances of that happening are so low. On top of just like everything else that I'm like clearly pointing out, like I think the chances of like someone recording the amount of storm activity and like where it, like there's enough times where I like say something or do something in the video and it looks like the storm reacts. Right? I mean, does that not seem? And again, am I saying it's something that Matt Wilkins is doing? I'm saying it's something that Yahweh is doing because he seems to take characters in his narrative, of which the whole point of the Bible is that we're still in that narrative and we are characters. And if you believe enough, you can be a part of that. Uh, he seems to do that around the characters in his narrative that truly believe in him and ask for help, or that he chooses to help or whatever. So anyway, that's what I wanted to point out in this video. That's what I wanted to talk about. I mean, maybe I'll upload with this video the previous one that I recorded, where I think I also talk about kind of the lack of earthquakes around Houston, yet seemingly the uptick in Texas. So it's like, is there something going on in Texas that would whatever? And like I'm saying, while I have caught some hailstorms here in Houston, it's generally like small hail, and it seems to be like a demonstration type thing. And like another good example is when I was let's just say I was taken against my will somewhere, that for reasons that I shouldn't have been taken against my will. Uh when that happened, it hailed on the place after specifically like multiple public things taught like of me from me saying like, relating hail to what's going on in my reality. It hailed on the place that I was in downtown Houston. That's not, it doesn't hail very often in Houston, let alone like the day that I'm taken into this place. And like it, it, you know what I'm saying? Like hailstorms, like literally the largest earthquake in California or the United States, meaning like in fact the largest earthquake to happen on the planet, I think in like 10 years, happened also during that period. Like numerous things, like some crazy volcanic stuff went on, like um and again, there seems to be upticks in this stuff when people are like trying to seemingly poke and prod me in ways or whatever, mess with me in ways that like are, there's plausible deniability for them to say that they're not doing it, but it's pretty clear that they are. Like if I hypothetically, there's someone on Instagram and I send that person a message, and I like send them a meme from a specific like not like insanely popular like Instagram page, and then the next day that person uh posts a meme from the page that I just sent, but they don't say anything to me, but they clearly are trying to indicate to me something, right? I mean, it's not like it's a page that they're going to stumble upon by their own. It is clearly something they've seen my message. They didn't respond to the message. They just, in order to show that they have seen my message, they post a meme from the page that I just sent a meme from, right? And again, it's not like a popular page that they're going to stumble on themselves, right? Um, that's what I mean. There's plausible deniability. Like they could still say, well, I just stumbled upon it, and what is this lunatic talking about? He's a madman. But like, my point is, I mean, you're not fooling me. You can play this game around this, but it seems like Yahweh's getting pretty pissed off because it seems like my reality is being kind of fucked with in a way that, pardon my French, that's actually English, but it seems like my reality and my person is being messed with in a way that is like meant to like mentally mess with me, but like that there's plausible deniability for the people who are doing it. And my point is, Yahweh's just gonna turn up the heat little by little, like boiling frogs type thing, right? You ever heard of boiling frogs? Um, so this is the last story that I'll leave you with. It's like the boiling frogs, where if you put a frog, just toss it into a pot of boiling water, a frog is gonna jump out of that pot, right? It doesn't want to be in the pot of boiling water. It knows what's going on. It wants to be out. It doesn't want to be burned. It doesn't want to die in a pot of boiling water. But if you put a pot of regular temperature water on the stove, and then you put the frog in, and then you turn it up slowly but surely, and you let it heat up slowly but surely, eventually the frog will boil alive because it doesn't hop out of the water, as it's like a amphibian cold. I don't, are they cold blooded? The whole point of the story is that its temperature just goes up with the boiling water, and it dies because it doesn't react to the water boiling in the way that it might otherwise react. By the way, this is going on at El Popocatépetl. Um, what I'm getting at is, it seems like, the people messing with me, it's like I think the point that Yahweh's trying to get over, and I think this is kind of the idea of Revelation, is that things get like, by the way, you can literally see this is like the first molten event that's happened at El Popocatépetl, like where you can literally see lava shoot out in like a week or two. I mean, maybe a month. Um, like there have been puffs of ash and stuff, but you just saw. I mean, that's like molten material going along the side there. If we go back, you'll be able to see it maybe better on this one. I mean, you can clearly see the molten material going down the side. Again, this is not like a common occurrence at Popo to the point where, at least not within the past couple of weeks here. And that again, this seemingly just based on the history that I seem to have that I have recorded. Uh, I personally feel fine making a case that like, okay, this is one of the volcanoes, and I think it's any volcano, but this one is in a relatively populated place. There's enough cameras on it where if you were going to use it to make a point, you know, it would be a good one to make a point. With same thing with Sakurajima, right? I mean, there's just cameras watching this one all over. But like, I mean, come on, like, find me another video of Popo shooting up lava in the past couple weeks. I mean, you might be able to find it a few weeks ago. That's what I'm saying. But it hadn't happened this week, or I don't think it happened last week, and I don't think it happened the week before. I think it's been like a month. You know what I'm saying? Like I think it's I think it's been a bit. And so anyway, in fact, I could literally pull up on, and this video is already long enough anyway. I might as well. I mean, what is another minute where I go back in and look for some kind of event at Popo? So I'm gonna do that. Oop, spelled it wrong. Okay, so here. This is what I did. I went to my Discord, pulled up El Popo. 3 explosions. Seemingly the last ones where, that volcano time lapse posted up, and we'll go back and look. November 19th, well, and November 18th, and November 17th. Well, I'll be darned. That's exactly like a month ago, right? Pretty much. November 17th would technically be at 2:44. I mean, that's almost exactly a month ago, right? These are the last times, at least that I can see, because Volcano Time Lapse usually pretty diligent about this kind of stuff, and generally some YouTube channel is gonna post it up, and I haven't seen anything, and again they generally post up on Volcano Time Lapse when this happens. These are the last times that there was anything that was this big, in the sense of where you can literally see lava or molten material going down the side of Popocatépetl. Oh, and a UFO? No, it's probably just a plane landing. This one is a little more interesting, but it's probably also just plane landing. Anyway, they aren't meteors, by the way. I mean, it's very clear they're not going fast enough to be meteors. Meteors look way different. Again, look, lava out the side. Okay, you just saw it on the live camera. That was the last time it had, like, literally these. In fact, technically, this is the last time that I've seen it happen. I don't look every night and review the activity, though I do look a couple times a week and review the activity for the previous night, and I haven't seen it, and we did just see a meteor there, I think. Let's go back. There's also been, Mr. MBB333 and Dutch Sense both seem to be in the independent belief that there has been an uptick in volcanic activity since late November. That there's been an uptick in earthquake activity to some degree since late November, specifically volcanic activity. But there's also a hint. Like Mr. MBB333 seems to think that there's an uptick in earthquake activity as well. I mean, seismic and volcanic activity are pretty linked, in my opinion. So that's kind of why I'm in agreement with that. Like, also independent, like based on what I was seeing, and then I saw that both of them, seemingly independent of each other, had stated the same thing. Right? And I made another video about that also recently. And then like meteor activity. Like I think Mr. MBB333 also seems to think that there's an uptick in meteor activity based on what he's seeing. And I haven't seen here an uptick in meteors, but I'm not always looking at the sky on non-cloudy, or non-rainy days. I'm not always looking out, to see meteors. Though there was that time only a couple, like this year, where I looked out and I was looking at the moon, and I just decided, like, I wanted to record a video of the moon because it was like a full moon or a blood moon or something, and I pull it out and I hit record, and oh, a meteor, like right in front of the camera. So that was interesting. Again, I think all cosmic and natural events can be, Yahweh can supernaturally affect them. So it wasn't that surprising to me that happened. But anyway, we got a glow here at Popo. I'm just gonna change back to this camera because I'm pretty much done with the points that I'm making. I did want to record this, and I did want to get it out. And I do think that there's, again, all I think that's going to happen is that even if there are lulls in like the activity, that it's going to clearly pick up and gain and get more intense and more obvious as time goes on. Um, and really, that's all I have for you right now. So, this video has now been an hour and a half long. I've been talking for an hour and a half. I do think it's warranted because, this size earthquake in Texas is, I would say, a rarity, but it just happened a month ago, so it doesn't seem to be that rare these days. But, not common. I think it warranted some kind of some kind of review from me. So that's it. That's all I have for you. Um, and I guess I'll also add this. I think just like in as it talks about the Old Testament and the New Testament, those who help someone who's like for Yahweh, like who's believing in Yahweh, maybe who's a prophet of Yahweh, uh, or who believes in Yahweh and Yahweh clearly has some kind of there's a protection over, even if they just believe in Yahweh, right? That seems to be gotten over by the Bible, like that. If you help that person, Yahweh will bless you. If you bless that person, Yahweh will bless you. And blessing doesn't just mean, oh, bless you. It's like, blessing means of prosperity. It's like you help that person, you don't hurt that person. It's like you provide something good for that person or some kind of uh in the least you're not like setting an obstacle for that person. On the other hand, if you hurt that person or prevent that person from doing something like from existing in a normal state of existence seemingly, um, if you hurt that person in any way, if you affect that person negatively, it there seems to be a theme, so thematically in the Bible as well as so in the narrative thematically, but also just directly stated, like those who put up obstacles, it seems to indicate like, okay, the blessing of Yahweh will seemingly fall on those who bless uh, people who follow Yahweh and people who believe in Yahweh. And if you help out someone who follows Yahweh, if you give them even so much as a cup of water, right, you'll have a reward, right? But the greater you help them and the more you're with them and the more you're in line with that person, like the more Yahweh will bless or be with or provide positively for you. Yet, if you do something negative and if you're causing that person pain or grief or problems or something, Yahweh will very sharply hurt you in some mechanism through some mechanism, right? Yahweh can be extremely blunt and obvious, or he can be very subtle and like um, problematic in ways that are hard to describe, but that you have a problem now. One of the things in the Old Testament when the Israelites are called to like conquest through the Promised Land, they're told, or the Hebrews are told, uh, essentially like, I'm not going to get rid of all these people in like one go. I'm not just going to destroy them all together, but I'm going to be like, you are to be, and I'm going to be like hornets amongst the peoples in these lands. And it's like slowly but surely they're to be rooted out of, and these are people, again, just give some context. These were people who were like murdering their children, doing like sacrifices, just like in Game of Thrones. I've seen one episode of Game of Thrones, like a small portion. It was this guy like sacrifices his daughter to some kind of dragon priestess or some kind of fire, like burns her alive so that they can have rain or something in the promised land that that the Israelites or Hebrews are coming out of Egypt to go take over the promised land. That's what the people are doing, is they're sacrificing their children, like burning them alive to Molech and to other deities in order to get the rain to come. Which would, that would be a reason to get rid of those people, because that's like insane. That is actually insane. And then to protect those people and say like the Israelites are bad people, it's like, no, you'd want to get rid of those people and those cultures and those traditions that like have it innately built in them that the way you bring the rain is to sacrifice children by burning them alive. So that's a strong digression from where we were. But anyway, if you help, so I'll go back. And this is the point I'm ending on. Say I'm someone who follows Yahweh, which I am, and I believe in Yahweh, which I am, I do. And say someone helps me. I think Yahweh will bless you abundantly. Like, I'll give you my blessing and manifestability, but I think Yahweh, the deity who sits on the throne of Yahweh, the one true God, I think he will bless you in ways that are obvious and not so obvious. And just, this is the deity that has control over life and death, who has, you can have $1 trillion. What does it matter if you're in a terrible shape physically or mentally or spiritually, that you're like so depressed or so physically ill or whatever that you can't enjoy your reality? Yahweh can bless you with that. Whereas on the other side, uh Yahweh can curse you and cause problems for you that are so significant. Like, first of all, if he just decreed something, it doesn't matter what anything or what anybody else has decreed, it's done. What Yahweh says is. That's the way it is. Um, so what I'm getting at is, if I'm that kind of person, my suggestion that I'm getting over, work with me and not against me. And I don't mean work with me in the plausible deniability way where it's very clear you're aware of my existence and you're, I guess, humoring me or something, right? I mean, it's amusing to me. It isn't not amusing. Like, truly. When I sent this person this meme page, uh, and like then it's reposted by them, and like it's not something that I've ever noticed them post. So I mean, but very specifically, I mean, even if hypothetically they had the day after and like within a couple hours of me sending it to them that they're gonna repost it, that shows me that you are aware of me to some degree, and that you are specifically trying not to say like, hey, there's this person who I'm aware of that he's very clearly asking for something reasonable. At least is asking for an audience that is like receptive, in the sense of like, all right, let's talk in a real way, not like I have to send you a meme page and then you're gonna respond with a with a meme from that meme page. I mean, with a different meme from the meme page. And I mean, there's other examples. I just thought that's a good example of something where it's like plausibly deniable for the person. Where it's like, oh, I just sent a random meme from this page that I found. I guess that's plausibly deniable. Um, there is a possibility that there's no connection between, uh, me sending the meme and them, right? Or me like making this thing and them. The probability is extremely low, though. I mean, let's be real. Probability wise, it's more in favor of they are clearly aware of me. They have clearly, I've, and sometimes I'm literally out of pocket on purpose, specifically to be as like, what am I trying to say? To elicit a reaction as much as possible, uh, because it took a long time for me to even draw out any reaction, and I found that being this kind of out of pocket can elicit more of a reaction, and it keeps me at least awake and aware amongst myself that this is clearly my reality, that people seem to be looking at me without trying to alarm or alert me that they are looking at me in a way that maybe is inappropriate to say the least, possibly illegal to say the most. I mean, a term called gang stalking. It sounds more serious than maybe it is, though in my case, it seems like it's maybe more people than it. Like, I can't exactly call up the scenario that's going on around me, but it does seem like there's some weird stuff going on in my reality. And my point is with this, and again, it's the final point. If you work with me in the way that I'm asking, not in the like some kind of, I mean, if you work with me, I suppose in any capacity, but and you're actually helping me, but there is a bit of like, hey, it's not helpful that this plausible deniability thing goes on. Like, it's stressful for me. It's not good for my mental health personally. Like, I don't think it's good for, if there's other people watching, what it would indicate is that it could be happening to them too. I don't think it's good for most, like, the mental health in general, but mental health in general, if people are indeed watching to the degree that I think people are. But anyway, if you help me, I think Yahweh will bless you. And not just me, those who follow him, but I can only vouch for myself, and I do believe I follow him and believe in him. So just as it talks about, I think if you bless me, you're blessed. If you curse me or cause me problems, I think Yahweh curses you and causes problems for you in everything from extremely subtle ways to obvious and overt ways that are just like dropping the hammer, right? And like, I believe in my reality, just as I've talked about the churches and the if then conditional statements to these churches, I believe very clearly in my life, there's a Jezebel character. This is one of those things where I don't think everybody who's a Christian has a specific Jezebel character who seems to be like a symbolic Jezebel of a group of people, the Nicolaitans or whatever, that are specifically setting traps which seem to be of a sexual nature. It talks about eating food sacrificed to idols, and then mentions that in line with adultery, and it seems to be something sexually related. I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with eating food, especially when Yahweh says he's going to come and eat food with you later on, grant you to sit with him on his throne. I mean, I'll talk about it in other videos eventually, and I have on the videos on my hard drive, but I don't think it has to do with food. I think it has to do more with sex. But anyway, that there is a specific Jezebel character who seems to be like attacking me. I mean, like trying to specifically tear me down and bring me down and mentally deflate me and psychologically abuse me and mess with me and torment me with as much plausible deniability as possible. And I don't think it's good for anybody, because I think it sets an example that is not good. But yeah, so bless. Just summing this up: bless me, Yahweh blesses you. Cause me problems, Yahweh curses you. I don't have to be more explicit than that. You don't want the curse. It's worse than anything you can imagine. The blessing, better than anything you can imagine, I believe. That's it. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you got this far and you like this kind of thing, I suppose like, comment, and subscribe. If you comment that I'm crazy, to be honest, I don't care. I think most people in our society are brainwashed, and if you're commenting that I'm crazy, you're probably brainwashed too. And just, I don't know. I don't really have to get into detail, but I don't think you're that bright also. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe at least enjoyed this stuff about earthquakes here in Texas. But yeah, I'll probably make some kind of highlight video of all the crazy supernatural stuff that has happened in my reality. I'm assuming it would be one of the crazier things that's on YouTube. But all right, anyway, have a blessed one. That's it for this video. So yeah, later. Yeah.